You ever feel watched? Not by cameras, not by people, something quieter, heavier. Like the room knows. Like your own bed is judging you. You lie there still as the grave, heart racing for no reason, eyes wide open at 3 a.m. like your soul can't sleep. And that's the thing they call it, insomnia, stress, overthinking. But deep down, something's off, something's wrong. Like there's something in that room, on that bed, that doesn't belong. And not just in the physical way, spiritually. Something's invited itself into your peace, and peace doesn't fight. It just leaves. You walk into your room thinking it's just a room. 4 walls, a bed, maybe some lights, some memories stacked on shelves, right? But it ain't that simple. Oh no, see, you call it your safe space, but the truth, it's more like a museum of your unhealed wounds. Every object, every little keepsake, souvenir that crumpled. Up note you shoved in a drawer 3 years ago when your heart was in pieces, it all speaks. Maybe not in words, but in weight. And you can feel it, the heaviness, the shift, the tension that crawls under your skin the second the lights go off and your smile fades. That weight doesn't come from the walls, it comes from what's inside them. People think clutter is just physical, messy, disorganized, but spiritual clutter? That's the real poison. You can clean the floor, change the sheets, spray your little lavender mist and pretend it's all zen. But if that one object, the one is still sitting there, smiling at you with all its history, then what you've got is not a clean room. What you've got is a haunted shrine. Not by ghosts, no. Not the kind that slam doors, the kind that whisper just enough to keep your spirit asleep. The kind that hold your future hostage with the scent of your past. People love to hold on. We're sentimental like that. We keep gifts from people who left, rings from people who lied, shirts that still smell like yesterday, even when yesterday's been dead for years. And we call it nostalgia, we call it memories, but let's call it what it really is, permission. You're giving your past a seat in your present. You're making room in your sanctuary for something that should have been buried. Not recycled, not displayed, not kept under your pillow like a sacred token. Buried, gone. You ever wonder why peace won't stay? Why sleep feels like a wrestling match and your dreams don't rest but scream? Maybe it's not you. Maybe it's not your prayers or your mindset or your low energy. Maybe it's that one thing, that object you refuse to question, the one that feels harmless. The one you defend with phrases like, but it reminds me of them, or it doesn't mean anything now. Yeah, that one. That's the thing dragging shadows into your space, setting up camp right where light is supposed to live. We act like physical stuff doesn't matter. Like what you keep in your house can't affect your soul. But if you believe in energy, if you believe in presence, in peace, in divine order, then you have to believe that not everything is neutral. Some things are contaminated, spiritually infected, cursed not with magic, but with memory, with ties, with open doors you didn't realize were still swinging wide at midnight while you wondered why your prayers were hitting the ceiling like dead birds. God doesn't need help diagnosing what's wrong. He knows. He's been pointing at it for a while now. That unease you feel every time you touch it, that's not random. That tightness in your chest when you look at it, not a coincidence. That sudden sadness that floods you when you lie next to it, not just a bad day. That's your spirit sounding the alarm, trying to wake you up from the toxic comfort of your own stubbornness. You think you're keeping it for the memories, but maybe the memories are what's keeping you stuck. There's a reason God lets certain things get uncomfortable, not to punish you, but to purge you. To make you question what you've normalized, what you've defended, what you've given sacred space without realizing it. Because the enemy, he doesn't need an army. He just needs access, a key, an open window, one object with an unhealed soul tie, one possession that still has your allegiance, even if your mouth says otherwise. And God, he doesn't force himself into divided rooms. If there's something else sitting on his, throw him, even if it's just a photo, a letter, a keepsake, he'll step back. And here you are begging for clarity, for signs, for breakthrough, all while sleeping next to something that mocks every secret. Something small, harmless, familiar. But isn't that the trick? The most dangerous things never look like monsters. They look like comfort, like love, like a piece of your identity that you swore you couldn't live without. But God's not asking for your logic, He's asking for your surrender. And that means going back into the room you decorated with emotional blind spots and asking the hard question, does this belong? Not in your memory, not in your story, in your present, in your bed, in your peace. In the same space you keep asking God to move there's this illusion we live under that the things around us are just things. Objects without voices. Memories without power, relics of a past that can't touch the now. But what if I told you that's a lie? That the things you carry, the things you keep close on your bed and your room tucked in drawers aren't just passive. They're alive in ways you don't see. They hum with energy. They hold stories. They carry emotions like ghosts trapped in glass. And those ghosts, they don't just haunt the past, they mess with your present. They block blessings, they cloud judgment. And they make your prayers bounce off the ceiling like rubber balls. You ever notice how some people never really leave your life? Not physically, but energetically. Like their presence lingers long after the goodbye. Their words echo in your head, their influence still pulls your strings, even when they're not there. And you wonder why you feel stuck, why the peace you crave feels just out of reach. You think you're praying right, you think you're walking in faith, but somehow the weight keeps growing heavier. That's because you're sharing your space with spirits that aren't yours to keep. Not actual spirits, but the residue of relationships, pain, and unresolved ties wrapped up in something as simple as a shirt, a gift, a photo, or a keepsake you refuse to let go of. People say I'm keeping it for memories. Memories? Sure. But memories are supposed to lift you up, not drag you down. If what you keep reminds you of hurt, betrayal, or loss, it's not honoring the memory, it's trapping you in it. Like a chain around your neck, invisible but heavy as hell. And every night, when you lay your head down, that chain tightens just a little more, squeezing out the peace, the clarity, the joy you're desperate to pour. That's not coincidence. That's spiritual interference. That's a silent battle raging in the space you call your sanctuary. You see, energy flows where attention goes. When you keep something that holds pain or toxic ties, you're feeding it. You're giving it power over your emotions, your thoughts, your very soul. And that power isn't passive. It influences your dreams, your mood, your health. It warps your perception of yourself and the world. Suddenly, what should be a safe space becomes a battleground. Your bed, that place where you should recharge, turns into a trap. You lie down, but your spirit doesn't rest. Your mind races. Nightmares come uninvited. You wake up drained, broken, more confused than the night before. And here's the real kicker, God sees it. He's watching the war in your room, the tug of war between your faith and your fears, your hope and your hang-ups. He's waiting for you to get real, to stop the lies you tell yourself about what harmless really means. Because God isn't blind, He's not fooled by sentimental excuses or nostalgic justifications. He knows when you're holding on to things that keep you tied to pain and keep Him out of your peace. He doesn't want you to pretend. He wants you to be free. And freedom starts with recognizing that some things in your life aren't neutral. They're doors, open doors to old wounds, bad habits, toxic patterns, and spiritual blockages. This isn't about superstition. It's about understanding the invisible, the unseen, the spiritual. If you believe in God and energy, in the battle between light and darkness, then you have to believe that the environment you create around yourself matters. That what you allow to dwell with you impacts your spiritual health. And if you want God's presence in your life, you have to be willing to clean house, not just physically, but spiritually. You have to be ready to let go of what's comfortable but poisonous. To toss out the relics that carry chains disguised as memories. Letting go isn't easy, it hurts. It feels like betrayal, like cutting ties with parts of yourself. But that pain, it's the pain of growth. the pain of transformation, the pain that comes before peace. Because when you finally say no to the things that hold you back, you're making space for something better, for clarity, for healing, for blessings to flow, for God to move freely in your life without interference. And the moment you decide to remove that weight, that's the moment you start reclaiming your power, your peace, your future. So stop pretending that everything on your bed, in your room, in your life is neutral. It's not. Some things carry spiritual weight, and that weight can keep God from moving in the way you need. If you want change, if you want breakthrough, if you want your prayers to land and stick, you have to start by asking yourself what you're willing to remove, what you're willing to sacrifice for your peace, what you're ready to lose in order to gain your soul back. Because sometimes God's upset isn't punishment. It's a wake-up call, a push, a loving shove toward the freedom you keep avoiding by holding on too tight. You ever notice how the most dangerous things in life don't roar? They whisper. They sneak in quietly, wrapped in smiles and good intentions, disguised as gifts and memories. They settle in your space like friendly guests and never leave. You call them attachments, sentimental keepsakes, reminders of better times. But what if those attachments are more like anchors? Chains tied around your soul, dragging you backward while you're desperate to move forward. You don't see them, not at first. They blend in with the decor of your life, but they're toxic. Poison masked as comfort. And the worst part, you think you need them. Emotional attachments are tricky. They play on your heartstrings, on your fears of loss and loneliness. You tell yourself, I can't throw this away because it's all I have left. But what you don't realize is that by holding on to what's dead, what's broken, what's no longer serving you, you're suffocating your own growth. You're keeping your soul trapped in a room with no windows, no fresh air, just stale memories and recycled pain. And every night, when you close your eyes, those attachments tighten their grip. They speak in shadows and echoes, feeding your doubts, your regrets, your fears. People don't like talking about emotional attachments because it's uncomfortable. It's easier to blame circumstances, to say I'm just unlucky or it's just life. But what if the problem isn't the world outside? What if the problem is what you're carrying inside? What if those little emotional weights are the reason your prayers feel unanswered, your faith feels distant, your heart feels heavy? Because the truth is, God can't work freely where there's divided loyalty. He can't fill a heart that's already full of old pain, resentment, or clinging to what should have been released. And that's where the real struggle begins. You want to move on, but those emotional chains pull you back every time you try. You want peace, but peace feels like a stranger because you're still living with ghosts. Not literal ghosts, but memories, emotions, and attachments that haunt your every step. They whisper lies, you're not enough, you'll always be alone, you need this to survive. And you believe them because the alternative, letting go, is terrifying. It means facing the void, facing yourself without the crutches, the stories, the familiar pain. It means stepping into the unknown without guarantees. But here's the secret nobody tells you: freedom doesn't come from holding on. It comes from letting go. It comes from courage, from the willingness to say no to what's comfortable but destructive, from the strength to remove the ties that bind you to old versions of yourself, to toxic relationships, to false identities. Because emotional attachments aren't just about objects or people, they're about identity. They tell you who you are, or who you think you are. And changing means rewriting that story, tearing down the walls built on hurt, and building something new, something real. God is not upset because he wants to punish you. He's upset because he sees you settling. He sees you clinging to shadows when he's trying to shine a light. He sees you inviting chaos into your sanctuary by refusing to release what's meant to be released. And that's the irony: he's calling you to freedom, but you're locked in chains made by your own hands. Those attachments, they're not just souvenirs, they're barricades blocking the blessings you desperately want. They're roadblocks on the path to your destiny. And the longer you carry them, the heavier your soul becomes. Imagine your bed where you're supposed to rest, to heal, as a battlefield. Every night you lie down surrounded by the echoes of old wounds, toxic ties, and emotional baggage. And the enemy doesn't come with swords or guns, it comes with memories and feelings that suffocate your spirit. That's why sleep is restless, why your dreams are filled with shadows, why you wake up feeling drained. Because you're not resting in peace, you're resting in unrest. And God's upset isn't about anger, it's about concern. It's a signal that something has to change. That you have to clean house, not just on the surface, but deep within. Letting go is never easy, it's painful. It feels like breaking a part of yourself, like losing a piece of your soul. But that pain is temporary. The peace that follows, that's forever. When you finally release those emotional attachments, you make space for healing, for clarity, for true peace. You create room for God to move in ways you never imagined. And you reclaim your power, the power to choose who you are, what you carry, and where you're going. So look around. What are you holding on to? What emotional chains are you dragging into your sanctuary every night? What attachments are keeping you from the breakthrough you're praying for? Because sometimes God's upset is a loving push, a call to wake up, to open your eyes, to see what's really holding you back. And the first step to freedom, recognizing that those attachments don't define you, they only imprison you. You ever think about what it really means to have God in your life? Like not just the idea of Him, but the real, raw presence that shifts everything. It's not a background noise or a whisper in the wind. It's a full-on takeover. A takeover that demands loyalty, attention, and respect. But here's the twist: God doesn't compete for space. He doesn't share the throne with just anything or anyone. He's not some polite guest waiting for an invitation while you juggle a dozen other distractions. No, He's either the king of your castle or He's nowhere in sight. And if He's upset, if His presence feels distant, it's not because He's forgotten you. It's because He sees the divided kingdom you're trying to hold together. See, you think you can have God and still cling to the things that pull you away from Him. You think you can. Keep that one toxic relationship, that one bad habit, that one object soaked in memories of pain, and still walk in His blessings. But that's a joke, a cruel joke you play on yourself. Because God's not interested in half measures. He doesn't share thrones with idols, no matter how disguised they are. An idol isn't always a golden statue. Sometimes it's a grudge, a secret, a fear, a comfort zone dressed up like safety. And if you're holding on to those, you're telling God, you can have some of me, but not all. And that's why He's upset. Because when you hold on to those idols, you are building walls around your heart. Walls that block out His love, His power, His breakthrough. You might be praying, begging for change, but you're sitting on a throne next to the very thing God is calling you to remove. It's like asking for light but closing all the windows. You want healing, but you refuse to let go of the infection. You want peace, but you're clutching the chaos like a security blanket. God's presence is disruptive. It's not meant to be comfortable. It shakes things up, tears down old structures, forces you to face what you've been running from. And that's why those idols make Him upset. They keep you stuck in the same place, spinning your wheels in the mud of yesterday. They keep you from becoming who you're meant to be. And God, He's not about settling. He's about transformation, revolution, renewal. But transformation requires surrender. Surrender means letting go of control, of comfort, of the familiar, even if it hurts. You think you know what you're holding on to, but maybe you don't. Maybe it's more than just an object or a person. Maybe it's a story you tell yourself, a lie you believe about your worth, your past, your future. Maybe it's fear dressed up as protection. Maybe it's pride masquerading as strength. And these things are more dangerous than anything tangible because they're invisible, sneaky, and they keep you chained in ways you don't see. But here's the brutal truth: God can't work in divided loyalty. He can't bless a heart that's half given. He can't pour into a vessel that's already full of old pain, bitterness, or secret idols. If you want God's full presence, you have to be ready to clear the space, to remove the distractions, the attachments, the things that feel like they belong but really don't. Because God's presence is not a gentle whisper on the side of your life. It's a storm that sweeps through and cleanses everything in its path. And sometimes that storm feels like anger, like disappointment, like a cold shoulder. But it's not hatred. It's a wake-up call. A reminder that you're bigger than your chains, that you're meant for more than your pain. That the things you're clinging to, the things you think define you, are the very things holding you back from the life God wants to give you. It's a call to choose, to decide who gets your heart, your time, your soul, because you can't serve two masters, not truly. So what does that mean for you? It means honesty, brutal, naked honesty. Looking in the mirror and admitting what you're holding on to that doesn't belong in your kingdom. It means courage to face the discomfort of letting go, the fear of the unknown, the pain of breaking old patterns. But it also means hope, because when you clear the space, when you remove the idols, you make room. Room for healing, for breakthrough, for a presence so powerful it changes everything: your mind, your heart, your destiny. God's upset because he sees your potential. He knows what's possible when you're fully his. But potential means nothing if you're shackled by the past. If you want the fullness of his presence, you have to be willing to lose what's weighing you down. You have to choose freedom over comfort, faith over fear, presence over distraction. Because in that choice lies your breakthrough, your peace, your destiny. You ever realize how sometimes the things we think are holding us down are actually just illusions? Like shadows on the wall that look real until you reach out and your hand just passes through thin air. But here's the trick: those shadows, they feed on your fear. They grow bigger the more you stare. They convince you that what's holding you back is permanent, that you're stuck, that there's no way out. And you buy it. Hook, line, and sinker. You convince yourself that the obstacles, the pain, the people in your life who hurt you or betray you, they have power over you. But what if I told you they don't? What if the only thing giving them power is your refusal to let go? Your refusal to believe that God can remove them, no matter how big, how toxic, how permanent they seem. Think about it. How many times have you felt trapped in a situation, a relationship, a cycle that seemed unbreakable? How many times have you begged for change but felt like nothing moved? The answer isn't in the outside world, it's inside. It's in your mindset, your belief, your willingness to surrender the old and welcome the new. Because God isn't powerless. God isn't sitting on the sidelines watching you suffer. No, he's ready to act, to move, to remove the people, the obstacles, the chains that don't belong in your story. But he needs your permission, your faith, your readiness to step into the unknown and trust that what's coming is better than what's leaving. That's the hardest part: trust. Trusting that when God says he's removing someone from your life, it's not cruelty or punishment. It's a loving act of liberation. It's a divine intervention designed to clear the path for your breakthrough. But the problem is you get attached, not just to people, but to the drama, the familiarity, the chaos. You hold on to toxicity like a lifeline because it's all you know. Even when it hurts, even when it poisons your spirit, you cling into it because change is scary. The unknown is frightening. So you resist, you fight. You question God's plan because you're afraid of the empty space that removal leaves behind. But here's the reality: empty space is not nothing. It's potential. It's freedom. It's the quiet before the storm.